How you gonna walk through this world? It's so easy to misstep. How are you gonna walk through the world? So easy to screw it up. You gotta rise like the sun does every day. Rise up, look above. The light feels something like love. Hello, friends. I'm Shelley Lidahl, a writer in lovely Ladysmith on Vancouver Island, and this is my literary podcast, Something Like Love. The 10 shows in Season 2 will center around random weekly themes, and I'll release a new episode each Wednesday. You're going to hear a shellified cover song, a selection of prose or poetry, either from my already published books or new work, and a meditation to soothe and inspire as we stumble together through these unprecedented times. Hang in there, folks. We've got this. Greetings. I hope this finds you well. Welcome to Season 2, Episode 10 of Something Like Love. My theme today is boy, and I'm reaching far back into the library to bring you a story from my short fiction collection, Orchestra of the Lost Steps. This book took me 10 years to write. Well, I had a lot of other things on the go back then, like being a mom, getting a university degree, and working at part-time jobs. This collection was published by Thistledown Press in 2004, and it's been out of print for many years now, but of all my books, it's one I'm proudest of. This story is called Baby Please Don't Go. There is a house in New Orleans called the Rising Sun, and it's been the ruin of many a poor boy and girl. God, I know I'm wrong. It was hotter than Hades the summer of 1982, and I had a perpetual headache. I wasn't used to that much sun. We were smack dab in the heart of Medicine Hat, where you'd trip over a rattlesnake if you weren't watching. Each morning I'd wake up in our cheap one-bedroom to find the mercury already climbing. You could smell it happening, a stink like scorched cotton those days Mama forgot herself with the iron. Then I'd roll off the damp sheets, finger rake my long hair, and wonder how the hell I got there, and who'd made off with my real life. Bern had a low-paying job repairing TVs and stereos that kept me free of him for 9-hour stretches. He left early with his brown bag lunch. The 3 things he ever told me about his line of work I remember to this day. AM stands for amplitude modification, FM means frequency modulation, and LED is short for light emitting diode. 3 tiny bites of info that I've never dropped into a conversation in my life. 3 more clots of knowledge that take up space in my brain, but never do me a damn bit of good. I was 21 and slowly dying. He brought me there in the night. I must have been wiped from the long drive up from Three Forks, Montana, and dazed by the city lights, which made me think of Las Vegas. The road curved up and around steep hills, the streets of San Francisco to my small-town eyes. I kept forgetting we were in Canada now. Byrne was a Canuck, born and duly raised. My birth certificate read Canada too, but my folks fell into the one-time luck of inheriting an American uncle's land. They'd hopscotched the border before I was old enough to tie my shoes. Byrne brought me back on the premise of fun times, decent sex, and easy employment, and my bald thirst for adventure kicked into gear like some kind of fancy sports car built for two, all mag wheels and dual exhaust. There were other things, too. He wasn't a mean drunk. He knew a bit about motors and constellations, and I got off on the way I'd ask him something, and he just let the question hang there for a few moments, suspended between us like clouds in a comic book conversation. He wasn't much of a talker from the get-go. My ex had been in love with the drama of his own voice, and when he did answer, he spoke real slow, as if waiting for exactly the right size and shape of words to rise up inside him before he opened his trap. We bunked with his parents that first night, slept in separate rooms. After we turned in, I crossed my arms behind my head and stared at the model airplanes dangling from his bedroom ceiling. Every once in a while, one of them would take a quarter spin, and it was there, sandwiched between his cowboy sheets, my feet pinned back at unnatural angles, that the first worm of doubt crawled through my veins. The next morning I helped his father with breakfast dishes. Byrne's dad was what polite folks call a heavy-set man, a retired school principal with his office nameplate nailed to the family's front door. He wore slip-on shoes so he wouldn't have to bend, the backs of his plaid slippers permanently crushed for immediate access. While Byrne and his mum yacked in the living room and the Shih Tzu worked itself into a licking frenzy on her toes, I washed and Byrne's pop dried. He asked me to rewash 1 fork and 2 glasses. We found our own apartment that afternoon. In the early days, I explored the city on foot, but there wasn't much of anything to discover beyond an exceptional thrift shop, where I bought a sweater the color of LJ for 1 quarter. I wore it over my tank top, then limped up the long hill home, sweat pooling beneath my breasts. The second and third times I made the journey, a couple of British soldiers from the Suffield base stopped me for cigarettes. I could hardly afford my own habit. I'd be damned if I was going to support anyone else's. At first, I couldn't buy a job, despite my dual citizenship. I had 9 months of secretarial school behind me, and thought the world would be clamoring after my 65 words per minute and Faulkner shorthand. But everyone was talking recession, and nobody had openings. Nobody was bloody likely to. But don't give up, Byrne would say, coming home after a day in the shop, to find me with my hand in a bag of peanuts or sucking the chocolate off an after 8, the TV tuned to another world. He'd go shower then, and when he came back we'd pull the blinds and start out on the couch, staying there to do the wild thing if we passed a certain point and couldn't make it to the bed. That, at least, was working well for us. After, Byrne would hold me against him, wrapping his brown arms and white legs around me like a cage, and he'd make me promise I'd never leave. Cross my heart, I'd say, mumbling it into his neck or chest, whichever part of him I was jammed against. He was 5 years older and had been engaged once. It was the girl that checked out, not him. He was the one that got burned. I followed a lead in the paper and got myself hired as a hostess. My job was to stand in the middle of a Hostess potato chip display at the local Kmart and offer samples to the passers-by. If I could sell them a bag, all the better. Most folks took the samples and didn't buy, but lots flat out ignored me. Fact is, I wasn't much to look at that summer. The hot air and dust had conspired against my hair, and with the vacant days spent snacking in front of the TV, then having all those chips in my face, I was inviting pounds like they were the latest rage, mostly on my hips and bust. The extra 15 made me even hotter, and not in a good way. My skin was a nylon suit, 2 sizes too small. Itchy. "Fuck it," I said, pinching 3 floppy inches of flesh below my ribs before I wiggled into the red hostess skirt. Fuck, shit, damn. Burns started to change around the end of July. Instead of wanting sex after his showers, he'd prop pillows against the headboard of our second-hand bed, pick up his red Fender Stratocaster, plug in the amp and say, "Call me when supper's ready." Then I'd hear him pluck out a blues riff, the same thing over and over 30 times or more. If it wasn't that, it was a tape. The Amboy Dukes with Ted Nugent on guitar smoldering through "Baby, Please Don't Go" at a volume I was sure Burns' parents could hear on the other side of the hat. I didn't know what was happening, didn't know if it was the oppressive heat, his kiss-ass job, me, or those Sunday dinners with his folks where they'd make us play mahjong and drink herbal tea until we felt drunk, and I'd have to kick Byrne under the kitchen table to make him take us home. I was kind of floating there myself, waiting for the right moment to bolt. We were 6 weeks into our cohabitation when I saw the sign taped to the wall in our coin-op laundry room. Wanted, it said, someone in the building to babysit 3-year-old boy, weekend afternoons and evenings. A phone number was printed on the fringes, scissored into the bottom of the page, but no one had pulled any off. The hostess job was only 3 mornings a week, and if I was going to split, I'd need cash. I threw Burns' work pants into the washer, pulled off a tab, and dragged myself back upstairs to call. The woman at the end of the phone was Carmen, from the top floor. I didn't know her, wasn't sure I'd ever seen her, as she came and went through the north end of the building, and Byrne and I used the south. "Come on up," she said. "I'll put the coffee on." I left a note for Byrne because it was Saturday and he was helping his brother move into a duplex. Byrne was pretty used to finding me at home by now, so I thought I'd better leave notice. I still carried a fraction of hope for us, but it was basically a losing proposition, like trying to light a cigarette in the wind. The hallway on the 3rd floor smelled like East Indian spices and an oil change, neither of which mixed well with the heat. I knocked on 313, the last number at the end of the hall, and thanked Jesus that we were on the main. "Hello," Carmen said, opening the door in bare feet, frayed cutoffs, and a halter top that drew attention to her flat breasts. I stepped past a thin tabby on its way out. Another cat, an orange shorthair with 1.5 ears, curled around the kitchen corner. The smell of cat piss, cat food, cat shit was almost audible. I stifled a cough. Carmen's boy came scooting up on a red tractor he pushed with his feet. He stopped inches from my toes. "This is Jojo. Jojo, this is Thea, the lady who's going to be taking care of you." "Hi, Jojo." I stuck out my hand. He just looked at it, so I ruffled his hair instead. I didn't remember accepting the job, but after a strong cup of coffee and half a dry donut, I found myself double-checking that she needed me at 3 p.m. on Monday, not 3:30. Carmen worked at the Sands till 11, and she'd always be home before midnight. I could open a can of this or that, spaghetti or ravioli for Jojo's supper. "He doesn't eat much," she said. "Eats like a friggin' bird." Byrne thought it was a good move. "I wasn't going to say nothing, but I don't like you working over there in the mall," he said, "especially in that little ass-hugging skirt. How's a girl supposed to have any self-respect in something like that?" "Yeah, Byrne," I felt like saying. "Like, you know about self-respect? College grad working for 50 cents above minimum wage? It'd be 5 years before he could see his way over the mountain of student loan debt." Sunday passed with the same uneventfulness I was getting used to. We slept late, did the last few days' worth of dishes, complained that there was nothing but shit on TV. It surprised me that Bern could grow up in a place and have so few friends. "It's a principles kid thing," he said, when I finally grew the balls to ask. He was tuning his guitar. The B string was especially sensitive. "Yeah, but Bern, you've been out of school for what, 7, 8 years?" He hesitated, as always, before he spoke. "The hat ain't that big." He plucked the temperamental B string again. "People don't forget." Monday came, and I didn't know what to do with the hours between lunch and 3, but sitting there at the table examining the fine red lines in my knuckles seemed like a powerful waste of time. So I got up and went into our bedroom. I poked around Bern's sheet music and guitar magazines, but I couldn't read music and only got a quarter of the way through an article on the legendary Buddy Guy. Suddenly, my half of the dresser seemed to be calling, so I set out to organize. I'd never been a folder, stuff and mix was more my style, but after removing the pants and shirts I'd grown too big for, I folded the remaining few clothes and separated them into piles: underwear, t-shirts, shorts, and other, which included bathing suits, 3 pairs of knee-high hose, a tensor bandage, and a black negligee that felt like oil in my fingers, an item borrowed from my oldest sister back in the day. Then I wandered into the bathroom, crawled onto the counter, and started snipping the dry ends off my hair. At 2:55, I pounded up the 2 flights to Carmen's, wheezing only a little. I didn't have to knock. The door was open, and she had one red stiletto-heeled foot already pointing toward the hall. She pushed her hair back and up. There were pounds of it, dyed the color of Kansas corn since I'd last seen her, with a few loose ringlets dangling in front of her ears like sprung mattress springs. "There's Cokes in the fridge," she said. "Bedtime at 8. She slipped a cigarette between cherry-glossed lips and dug in her handbag, for a light, I suppose. "Oh, I just about forgot," she said, and pressed a scrap of paper into my hand with a number scribbled on it, her long nails barely scraping my palm like a tickle. "Call me if you have any trouble." Jojo was on his tractor, staring up through bangs that looked like they'd been sawed off rather than cut. I closed the door and bent my knees, cracking in unison. I pushed his bangs aside to see his eyes clearly for the first time. What I saw there nearly split my heart in two. "So, looks like it's you and me, kiddo." A kitten the color of tires leapt onto my lap. "Whoa, hey, where'd you come from? How many kitties do you have, Jojo?" The boy held up 4 fingers. "Tree." It would be fair to say that it was an easy job. I pretty much did what I'd been doing downstairs, watching TV, snacking, except now I'd take breaks in my routine to slide a wooden puzzle together or read a Dr. Seuss. Jojo liked me. He'd snuggle up against me and we'd watch the soaps together, or he'd grab my hand when I decided I'd had enough of the cat stench, and we'd walk to a school playground 2 blocks away. I liked him, too. He was a cool kid, the kind strangers smiled at. A little withdrawn, perhaps, but I'd sit him on the swings, tell him to hang on tight, and give him underducks until he squealed. I enjoyed hearing him laugh, the sound soap bubbles would make if they could. So I played the clown with him, wearing plastic mixing bowls on my head or putting on a puppet show, my hands dancing inside socks. One afternoon at the playground, a mother joined me on the park bench while Jojo and her 2 boys made trails in the sandbox and pushed imaginary cars. "He looks so much like you," she said, and I felt a surge of pure, sweet joy. Sometimes Bern would come up after work. "Cute little ankle biter," he said once, throwing a foam ball for Jojo to chase like you'd throw a stick for a dog. "But what's up with his eyes?" "What do you mean?" I asked, and looked at Jojo. I saw the warm, wiry body that I snatched up several times a day and held close to my heart while rubbing my nose against his head. I took a phantom breath of Johnson's baby shampoo, the scent of his fine hair. Byrne cracked the beer he'd brought up with him. He's a little blue beneath the eyes, don't you think, and skinny for a kid, like an Ethiopian the way his belly sticks out. "Jojo," I called, "come here, sweetie." The boy ran back with the ball and stood in front of the TV, knob-kneed legs, saggy training pants, T-shirt with a huge grape popsicle stain front and center. I planted a kiss on my palm and touched it to his cheek. "That's it. He can play now." "Play with me?" "Sure. Why don't you get your blocks?" I watched him tear down the hall toward his room, where toys were scattered across the carpet, and at least one cat would be curled on the nest of clothes in the corner. I started bringing apples, oranges, and raisins from home. I chopped up carrots and stuffed them into little bags, and I'd sneak up a can of peas or corn from the cupboard after Byrne bought groceries, hoping he wouldn't notice. I didn't meet the boyfriend until week 3. "Thea, this is Hal. Hal, Thea." He'd come home with Carmen after work on a Thursday, a lumbering, thick-armed man with a 3-day beard and no ass. He filled the apartment doorway. It was 5 to midnight. Carmen's returns had been creeping closer and closer to the next morning. "Hi," I said, waiting for him to decide whether we'd shake hands or not. We didn't. "Hey," he said. It was more of a belch than a word. I told Carmen that I thought Jojo was coming down with a summer cold. "He's got the sniffles," I said, "and he just doesn't have his usual amount of get up and go. Could be the cat." "Thanks for letting me know," Carmen was saying. I wasn't focusing on her. I was looking over her shoulder at Hal's shit-kicking boots propped on the pillows at the end of the couch, where Jojo often laid his head. The only activity he'd been interested in for the past several days was pushing the magnetic alphabet letters around on the fridge. I'd been trying to teach him things, simple things. C-A-T, cat, just like that. Now you try. But he seemed most impressed by the colors. He lined the magnets up in combinations that pleased him rather than by the sounds I told him they made. Earlier that day, I'd picked up the J, a watery purple. "J, the first letter of your name, Jojo, and this," I slid a canary yellow O across the fridge. "This is an O. J-O. That makes the first part of your name, and the second part." I searched the front of the fridge, then the side that wasn't crammed up next to the cupboard for another J, but couldn't find one, so I used the same letter over again, hopping it over the O like a checkers piece. The second part is the same as the first. J-O, J-O. Pretty neat, hey? You got a pretty neat name. On Friday, Byrne phoned when Jojo was having his nap. He felt like going out. "I can't," I said. "I gotta babysit. You go ahead, though, if you want to." "Is something wrong? I don't know, you seem to be pulling away from me," he said. I could have thrown our curious lack of sex in his face, but I wasn't up for a fight. Plus, I was missing a major moment in the soap. A plane was going down in the Amazon jungle, while a woman about to deliver twins was screaming blue murder at her lover, the pilot, who was suffering a heart attack in the cockpit. Nothing's going on. I'm just beat after I'm done here. It's hard work looking after a kid, you know? You gotta play all the time." Silence. "You're planning something," he said. "You're going to leave." "Hello? Anybody out there?" I just finished saying there's nothing going on. Go out. Have a blast. I hear there's strippers at one of the hotel bars. "Promise you're not leaving?" "I solemnly do declare," I said, annoyed at his persistence, this weak side of himself he was displaying. I like a guy who keeps his tears and neuroses to himself. He didn't go out. He came upstairs and played crib with me until Carmen and Hal came in with whiskey so thick on their tongues and breath, I had to step back. It was 12:30. Back in our own apartment, I hit the sheets. "Aren't you coming?" I called. I'd left Bern on the couch where he was playing his Fender without the amp plugged in. I could hear the streaking sound of his fingers on the strings like someone wiping a window clean. I was used to sleeping beside him. I'd grown to need his rhythmic breathing in my ear before I could fall asleep. "Bern?" "In a minute," he said. I tried lying on my side, my stomach. The extra weight had shifted to my gut, and I played with the wobbly flesh there, pinching it, wishing I could slice it off. I imagined taking a steak knife and performing the surgery myself, scraping away the blubber, then stitching up the incision with Bern's fishing line. "Bern, when are you coming?" He didn't answer. Then I heard Ted Nugent's jumpy, definitive intro on the stereo, and I knew I'd lost Bern for the night. A week to the day, I found myself in a piss-poor mood. The heat hadn't let up one iota, even though we were waist-deep into August. The headaches weren't unbearable, but they were always there, bullseye, right above my nose. Bern was downstairs watching TV, where he could listen at whatever volume he wanted to. At 10, I made myself a cup of tea. I could smell cats stronger than ever, so I knew I must have forgotten to close the door to the storage room, where the pack of them shared one litter box. I couldn't even look at the thing for fear it might be writhing, let alone hold my breath long enough to clean it. I closed the door, then peeked in on Jojo. He was on his back, bangs partly hiding his sleeping eyes. I opened his window as far as I could and breathed in the night, then pulled a sheet over top of him, standing there for a moment, my hand on the small bones of his chest, feeling his warmth slide right up my arm. Carmen's door was open. I'd avoided her room, except when Jojo asked me to dig something out from under the bed, a ball or his water gun. But I was bored and pissed that it was already 12:48 a.m., and she hadn't called, hadn't apologized, or offered more money for all the times she'd been late. I walked in, surveying the unmade bed, high heels pitched by the closet, lipsticks, blush, and tubes of mascara littered across the dresser, along with big hooped earrings and used cotton balls, Jojo's stuffed panda. I opened her closet and fanned my hands against the shoulders of her outfits, making the hangers ting against each other. She had a lot of clothes, mostly clingy dresses and dark blouses, not the kinds of things I would ever wear. I moved to the dresser and set my cup down. Da-da-da-da-da. Da-da-da-da-da. I thought I could hear Bern's music riding up the 2 flights of stairs and down the hallway, but in another second it was gone, and the only sound was the tabby scratching its nails along the carpet, then me sliding out Carmen's top dresser drawer. Push-up bras, red panties, a silk scarf. My eyes got stuck on the other items. A flesh-toned vibrator, handcuffs, something with balls and wires that looked foreign and torturous. I slammed the drawer, wiped my hands on my shirt, watched myself back out of the room between Jojo-sized smudges in the full-length mirror. On Saturday, it started to spit rusty slivers of rain, as though God himself was chewing snuff up there in the heavens. Precipitation of any color was rare as luck, so when it came, I took it as a sign. My head's splitting, Bern. We're out of everything. Could you get me some aspirin at the drugstore? Oh, and your brother called when you were in the shower. Said he wanted you to go over there. Something about a friend of his, some guy looking to buy a guitar. A bass, I think. Which friend? Bern asked. I don't remember, Ron or Rob or something. He said to go over. The lie worked as well as a sharp knife on day-old bread. While Bern was gone, I scooped the contents of my side of the dresser into a suitcase, dumped my cosmetics and birth control pills into a bag, and whipped up my shoes in the hall closet. I left my red hostess skirt on the bed, right where my hips would be if I was lying there next to Byrne. I knew when the bus was leaving. I had to work fast. I probably didn't need to do it that way. It smacked of a getaway, and, in a sense, I suppose it was. I was a few minutes early to board, so I flipped through a National Enquirer, an uneasy feeling choking its way up my throat. I kept glancing over my shoulder, expecting to see Byrne tearing into the place and shooting the works of us down. Well, me and the old lady knitting booties on the opposite bench, which was the works of us. Everyone knows it's the quiet ones you can't trust. I had enough money to get back to my parents' place. Then I'd push off again, maybe south this time, maybe see what all the fuss about L.A. was for. Soon enough, I'd have to quit running around and make a real grown-up life, but not yet. I thought about how Byrne used to take my feet in his lap, and the good hard rubs he gave. It hadn't been bad there with Byrne. I'd seen sorrier times. For some girls, it may have been enough, but as the bus backed out of the station and the highway rolled out before me like undeveloped film, I knew I'd never be sorry for what I'd left him with. 3 dirty ashtrays, 2 damp towels, and 4 rooms emptied of what he presumed was love.
Call the rising sun, and it's been the ruin of many a poor boy and girl. God, I know I'm wrong.
Hello again. I wanted to tell you that I feel like I've been playing catch-up for a little while now, so I'm going to take a 6-week sabbatical from this podcast and nourish my body and spirit with loads of hiking, reading, running, and yoga. Perhaps I'll even get into my sea kayak, and I'll be back here on St. Patrick's Day to share something fresh and possibly green. Now let's get you refreshed and relaxed with a short meditation you can do here and now or save for later. There are countless types of meditation practices, including mindfulness meditation, transcendental meditation, chakra yoga, and guided meditations. Today I'm going to suggest that you find your calm center by doing a metta meditation with me. Metta meditation is also called loving kindness meditation. It's the practice of directing well wishes toward others by reciting specific words and phrases meant to evoke warm-hearted feelings. This is also commonly found in mindfulness and vipassana meditation. Metta meditation is typically practiced while sitting in a comfortable, relaxed position. Perhaps light and focus on a candle. After a few deep breaths, you repeat the following words slowly and steadily. May I be happy. May I be well. May I be safe. May I be peaceful and at ease. After a period of directing this loving kindness toward yourself, try to picture a family member or friend and repeat the mantra again, this time replacing the pronoun I with a specific name. For example, may Judy be happy. May Judy be well. May Judy be safe. May Judy be peaceful and at ease. As you continue the meditation, you might want to add others in your life. Your friends, family members, colleagues, perhaps even a stranger you saw on your errands today, someone who looked like he or she could use some kindness. And here's how this also works. You can even visualize a person you're currently having difficulty with. This kind of mental massaging may do you both wonders. When you've repeated the mantra, naming yourself, then whomever else you're focusing on, end the meditation with the universal mantra, may all beings everywhere be happy. I wish you peace and happiness. Be well, my friends.
I know I'm wrong. How are you gonna walk through this world? It's so easy to misstep.